Hello and welcome to Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. On this edition of the show, we'll hear from a scribe and a songster. Let's start with music. My first guest is Francine Honey, a singer-songwriter from Leamington. Francine has recently released a new CD called To Be Continued. She also created several wonderful music videos featuring songs from her new CD. And we're going to show you one of these videos later in the program. Francine, welcome to Scribes and Songsters.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Congratulations on your new CD.
Thank you very much.
Now, as I was listening to this, I was wondering, how would she describe herself as a musician? What genre? Would you put yourself in a genre?
Yes, I think it's Americana. Finally, I figured out where I fit in the music industry. And there's no such thing as American Canadian Americana. But it is Americana, the album that I've created.
I noticed that as I was listening, sometimes I heard country.
Yes.
Sometimes country rock. Would that be right?
Yes, blues.
Yeah.
Folk. I think that's really Americana. It's a whole mix of a mixed bag of different types of music.
Do you find that a number of sort of singer-songwriters are doing that now? That they're not just all one thing?
Yeah, I think there are more and more people doing more of that kind of thing as opposed to just writing for country or just writing for folk or rock. So, yeah, I think there are more people doing that.
Tell me a bit about yourself. When did you start realizing that music was what you loved?
Well, I've been writing music for many, many years, since I was 12.
Wow.
And I started studying piano when I was 6. I sang in the choir at church. And then when I did music all through high school, and then when I got at the end of grade 12, I thought, I didn't actually ever think that I could make a career out of doing music. So I chose another route. I went the mathematics and computer science route, and I had a whole career in the federal government in Ottawa. Worked in there for about 25 years and always wrote songs, made sure my kids did music. Never really did I think that I could do music.
Now, it's interesting because, I mean, people, far more knowledgeable than I, say that there is a great correlation between music and mathematics.
I agree with that 100%. Yes, there really is. I think the fact that I did music very early helped me with math. And I don't know if math really helped me with music. I haven't seen that connection yet, but I certainly do believe that there is a strong correlation between mathematics and music.
Let's go back to your journey from
Yes.
being 12 to getting to the federal government.
Yes.
What was it like? How much time did you have for music when you were working all those years?
Not a lot. I was also a divorced mom, and my husband was gone. He really wasn't in the picture. So my life really was focused on raising my 2 children. So I'm really happy that I had that university education and I had the job in the government, because that really allowed me to raise my children on my own. I did write as a form of therapy. For me, it was a real outlet to write. And so when my son turned 16, he, you know how teenagers say, get a life, Mom. I was really focused on my children because obviously they were my life. And we had this moment, the 2 of us, where he said, Mom, how can I go to college or go to university if I'm worried about what you're going to do? And I said,
What a lovely son.
I know, he is wonderful. I have the best children. And I said, you know what? Like, that was like a light bulb going on for me. I immediately the next day went out, bought some new guitar strings. I said, don't worry, honey, like Mom's going to be just fine. I'm going to get back into music. So that's exactly what I did. And it was just like the faucet had turned on. I just started writing again and playing guitar, going out to open mics. I did a little CD with songs that I had written for my family and friends, and I cut 50 of those, and I just gave them out at Christmas time, and then people were calling me saying, wow, that was so great. Can I buy 10 of those? And I thought, really? Wow. I was just shocked that people really wanted to hear my music. So that's kind of how this all started, by my just giving 50 of these self-produced CDs out to my family and friends, and they would call me and say, oh, I really love that song, or I love that song. And that just really encouraged me.
So how did you get from going out and getting new strings and handing out your little CDs to Nashville?
Well, I had a lot of opportunity to write. Songs were always coming to me, and I would just work on them. When I was working in the federal government at that point in time, my job was very stressful. It was 70 to 80 hours a week.
Wow.
Yes.
That doesn't leave a lot of time for creativity, does it?
No. So I actually made a bit of a move. I actually moved to Toronto for a year and worked at the University of Toronto. And I took a songwriting course there. And that really slowed my schedule down as well. And at that point in time, I had met my sweetheart, and which is why I kind of moved to Toronto for a year, because, we wanted to see how things were going to work. And so every day I would go into work, and I just couldn't believe that I was actually working, because I really just wanted to be home writing songs. So it was getting harder and harder every day to force myself to go into work and not just stay home and write. So we decided to get out of Toronto, and we moved to Leamington, which is where my partner's parents are from. So we've been in Leamington for 5 years now. And I thought, okay, here's my chance. I had many songs that had Finish Later written at the bottom. And I thought, when is later going to come? I'm going to be dead, and I'm going to have all these songs that say Finish Later on the bottom. So I quit my job, and we moved to Leamington, and I've been writing songs since then. I've been going down to Nashville, learning more about songwriting, taking workshops, working on my craft, and found the producer that I wanted to work with for this album, Nielsen Hubbard, in Nashville. And we recorded this album live off the floor in 6 days. So it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the music is really quite lovely.
Thank you.
I like is the way you've arranged it. There'll be something that's very up tempo, and then something sort of really quiet, and then you're bopping again. I really sort of I was listening to it driving, and it really puts you in a good mood.
Oh, thanks.
No, I know that you do a lot locally. You entertain, and you also have a special workshop.
Yes, I have a songwriting group. The Songwriters Association of Canada have regional writing groups, so it's groups in different areas all across Canada. And we have a group in Leamington. It's the Leamington-Windsor Regional Writers Group, and we meet once a month throughout the school year. We take July and August off. So that's a wonderful group. So it's been going for 4 years.
People can hire you to write a song for them?
Yes, I do that. I love writing songs with people or for people if there's a special occasion, a retirement, a birthday, an anniversary, whichever. Or, some people actually who have suffered trauma. I work with soldiers. I work with people who've, been through trauma to help them tell their story.
That is just so cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on
you.
this. We're going to watch a video very shortly, but I want to say thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Veronique.
It's great to have you. And where can people get your CD?
Well, you can go to my website, francinehoney.com, or I'm also on Spotify, Apple Music, all those different places.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Well, now that you've had a chance to meet Francine, Let's watch her music video featuring the song Snowflakes on My Eyelashes. It's from her latest CD, To Be Continued.
Snowflakes on eyelashes, softly falling through the heavens. Find your name underneath my glove. Etched in stone, rest in peace, my love. Kisses from you, falling from heaven. A snowflakes on my eyelashes. Snow is falling through the heavens, softly landing, silent white blessings. Close my eyes, turn my face to the sky. Feel your kiss, angels granting my wish. Kisses from you, falling from heaven. The snowflakes on my eyelashes. Breathing deeply, smell of pine, nature's incense, so divine. Feel you here, fingers wrapped in prayer. you're sending from heaven.
That was Snowflakes on My Eyelashes by Leamington singer-songwriter Francine Honey. Well, my next guest is Rosalyn Knight from Kingsville. Rosalind is a former teacher who taught English and creative writing for 30 years. She's now published 2 books, a novel, That Summer at the Metawas, and more recently, a book of poetry titled Songs of Zambia. Welcome to Scribes and Songsters.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here.
I want to talk about, obviously, your book and your poetry, but tell us a little bit about you. Did you grow up in Kingsville?
I actually grew up in Windsor, and I came to Kingsville I spent all my summers at Cedar Beach. And so I kind of feel that Kingsville is a place where I've been all my life as well. But once I married, I've been living in Kingsville for 43 years since I've been married. Yeah.
When did you start writing and getting published, or thinking, well, maybe this this is good enough to get published?
I think probably after I retired. I retired in 2005, and that I had some time, I think, then to write. And so what I'd like to do is actually look to see what contests are around, whether poetry or, short stories. And I have written a few poems that have been published, and it kind of is encouraging, and it makes you want to do some more. Yeah. I never really set out to write a novel. That just kind of happened. And in terms of the chapbook of poetry, that was inspired by my trip to Africa. So,
and we'll talk about that after. It's just tremendous. But let's go to the Metawas.
Okay.
People who don't know what the Metawas was. Tell us about it. Not the book itself, but Metawas.
Well, it was it's an Aboriginal word, and it means the confluence of water, the coming together of waters. So Hiram Walker, when he decided to build this fabulous hotel and resort on what he called Kingsville I think he called it a paradise, Kingsville Paradise. He thought that would be an appropriate name for it because of Lake Erie and because of Mill Creek, which runs through our town. So that was the coming together of the waters, since the place was built right on the lake.
So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, it was kind of twofold. When I first saw a picture of the Metawas, it was, I think, in early 2000s, and it was from looking at, rather, A Stroll Through Time, which is I don't know if you are familiar with it, but it's a double volume, kind of like a history book, or a book having to do with the community that was put out by the Historical Society.
Right.
I saw this image of this palatial, wonderful hotel right on the lake, and I've lived here all my life. I had never seen it. It wasn't there. I didn't know what had happened to it. So I always knew I'd write about it someday once I stopped teaching, when I had the time. And then in the early 2000s as well, I had some personal stuff going on. My sisters and I had to sell our family cottage at Cedar Beach. My mom had dementia. My father had passed away. My mom was in a home. And so when we were at Cedar Beach, and my husband and I were going through a lot of the closets, pulling out what I would call artifacts, I guess, from our family history, it really made me nostalgic and really made me think about growing up at Cedar Beach, Kingsville, when I was growing up there in the 1960s. And so I thought, wouldn't it be perfect if I could write something that would bring my two interests together, the interest in local history and in personal story. And so that's what I did. That's why it's a historical fiction. It has a lot to do with my real great Aunt Betsy. But I thought, wouldn't it be kind of fun to imagine what it would be like for her had she been a domestic servant in the year 1900 at the Metawas. So that's what I did. I made her a chambermaid there. So it was just the coming together of the two interests.
You really brought a sense of Zambia to the poetry, and but what inspired it?
Well, my son asked me in about 2014 if I'd like to accompany him to Africa. He was going to be team leader. He had been to Africa with Habitat for Humanity 4 or 5 times. And my first response was, oh no, I couldn't possibly, because how could I a woman of a certain age, how could I possibly be building a home, in Africa? And he said, well, don't answer right now. Just, give it some thought. So the more I thought of it, I thought, yes, I can do that. I can do this. So, yeah, because it was my son and he'd asked, I went and it's amazing what one can do when one puts one's mind to it, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you write any of this when you were there, or did you do it when you got back?
Well, again, a lot of this came from my journals. Because I was journaling, I could remember specific details about how I felt at the time and what I was seeing, what I was smelling, basically what I was feeling.
Window cleansing. Widow cleansing.
Widow
Sorry.
cleansing. See, you're nervous too, aren't you? You're probably getting nervous from sitting across from me.
I really wanted to understand how you felt writing this.
Probably similar to how I feel if I were to read it, because I find it's such an emotional thing. It's so different from us here in Canada and what the expectations are on women. And as I wrote in this poem, the widow cleansing had to do with the fact that when a woman lost her husband, it was expected that in order for her to keep her own few possessions, whatever they were, she had to have sexual relations with a relative of her husband. And perhaps marry him.
Read it for us, would you?
Okay, sure. I should just say, too, that Veronica was one of the women then for whom we built a home, because we built 2 concrete block homes when we were there. So Veronica was chosen by the Zambian people. Widow cleansing. Veronica is a widow. Tradition has it that she must sleep with at least one of her in-laws, an uncle or brother or nephew, have sexual relations with kin to cleanse her of her dead husband, the ghost of his presence still within her, to break the bond with his spirit, to save herself and the rest of the village from insanity or disease, no condom to interfere with this rite. But the widow says no. Having refused, she is rejected by her community, cast out. How dare she challenge the tribal leaders? Her denial of the ritual, their excuse for purging her of her possessions, what little they are. Her surviving children and grandchildren, still her responsibilities, walk barefoot around her in squalor. Today, Veronica sits smiling on an overturned pail, outside the crumbling clay structure, where at night they all pile together to sleep. Today, Veronica watched us build a tiny mortar and cement block house that she will somehow make a home.
It's quite incredible, isn't it? How
it makes
people
me
live.
Yes, and it makes me really so appreciate what we have here in North America, and it really makes me appreciate Canada. Makes me also appreciate the fact that, we can be of a certain age, but we can do more than we think we can. And so we, in 8 days, built 2 concrete block homes for 2 different people, 2 different families, 300 square feet each home, no electricity, no water. But on the last day, they received a key to the door to get in. So they, for the first time, they're one of the few places that have a locked home. And probably about 10 people would be in each home. And it was Habitat for Humanity, the Zambian people, who chose which people would receive the gift of a home.
You can't imagine having that many people in that amount of space, can you?
No, you can't. Very, very crowded, and it just seems so foreign to me. What I really, really took away, I think, was the fact that these people have so little, but they're pretty happy. The children are barefoot. I'm talking about Kamanga. I'm talking about a place in Zambia that's actually a slum, because there are some beautiful places. I mean, we were not hard done by at all. We stayed in Lusaka, and we were in a lodge. It was not quite a lodge by our standards here in Canada, but we certainly had some delicious food that prepared for us a morning meal and a night meal. And we slept under mosquito nets, and we were very comfortable. But then once we got into this bus, there were 13 of us in our team, ages 18 to, I was the oldest, so I'll just say of a certain age.
More than 18.
Yes, for sure. More than 18, yeah. About 20 minutes down the road, we entered this slum area. And it's just so amazing that these children they're barefoot. They have so little. These particular people have no education. They don't have the grandparents who largely take care of a lot of the children, because there was a whole generation that was wiped out through AIDS, pretty much.
Right.
So a lot of the grandparents are looking after grandchildren. And these are really a lot of children who are at risk. You know, I mean, the poverty is unbelievable, and they're happy. I mean, they play. You see kids on the road playing with bits of charcoal, and they have so little. So when they all crowd together, there's a very strong feeling of family and community, and it's really something to behold.
What's next?
You mean for Habitat or for writing?
For writing.
Right. Well, I'm writing poetry. I'm very interested in our local history, and I'm interested, as I've mentioned, in personal story. So I think right now I'm looking to write about Kingsville and about stories that come out of this place.
And where can people buy your work?
Well, because I'm self-published, it's actually, I don't have a website. I'm really not very technologically savvy, but I have my, it's my name, Rosalind_Knight at hotmail.com. I'm very happy to send anything out. But I did want to say that Viewpoint Winery also has my novel. And it's interesting because it is based on the architecture of the Meadows.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
that's
Mr. Fancy,
fascinating.
yes, who is the owner, was talking to me when he very kindly said I could sell my books there. He explained that when they were building the Viewpoint, they wanted it to be a destination place, not unlike the Meadows. And so it's, if you think about it, it does look quite similar. So you could get the book there.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank
Pleasure
you so
to be
much.
here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that's it for another show here on Scribes and Songsters. Many thanks to our guests, musician Francine Honey and writer Rosalyn Knight. Also, big thanks, as always, to Gary and Brian. I'm Veronique Mandel. Thanks for watching. See you next time here on Scribes and Songsters.
Falling from heaven, a snowflake on my eyelashes. Snow